So with that, we're about 1 minute after the hour. I'm going to go ahead and get this show on the road. We are hosting our third in our series of 5 programs today with potentially the longest webinar title ever, to post or not to post, how to modify your social media strategy amidst COVID-19. Lots to think about in terms of social, I think not only from the perspective of a consumer and kind of what you're looking at and experiencing, but also what you might want to think about posting as well. So lots of angles and perspectives to consider and share today. We certainly want to welcome you to the webinar. We know that you have lots of choices to make right now in terms of either programs to participate in, things to read, or things to do for your own organizations. And we appreciate you spending an hour with us. With that, there are a couple of ways to engage with us throughout the webinar today. The first is the Q&A function. I'll invite you to locate that function in your Zoom window now. That Q&A feature is a great way to capture the attention of our moderators and panelists today. It sort of skips to the top of the list, and we will either respond to you within that Q&A function that is accessible to all participants, or we will answer your question live on the webinar. So that's a great way to sort of skip to the front of the line, if you will, and be sure that we see your question and get it answered. Another good function to communicate and to chat with everyone would be the chat function. And so if you've not yet located the chat box, we'll invite you to do that now. We will have a couple of opportunities for you today to specifically share with us some thoughts, ideas, and insights in that chat box. The only tricky thing to know is that it defaults to all panelists, in which case your fellow participants can't see what it is you're writing. And so I will invite you to toggle that off to all panelists and attendees so that we can all engage with one another throughout the program. And this is sort of your invitation to communicate. I think that some of the webinars that are happening now and in general are sort of one-way communication mechanisms, but we really do try to open these up to have two-way communication to the extent possible. So although we can't see and hear you, the chat box is a great way to communicate and share insights throughout our conversation today. So with that, we're going to move on to introductions. For those of you that have been joining us for a couple of weeks now, this will be no surprise to you, but for those that are new, welcome. My name is Aaron Walowick. I'm the CEO of EventGuard. We are a professional development consulting firm based in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. My main sort of strength and goal with having this consultancy is focused on learning and networking for major meetings and events. We help customers, associations with both statewide organizations, but also national organizations, develop engaging learning networking experiences that help build and contribute to your brand. I also am a technology of participation certified facilitator and mentor trainer, along with Lindsay, who you'll meet here shortly. And I write and coach and speak on a lot of topics relative to associations. Our team of 12 brings a lot of expertise relative to meetings and events, focused on marketing and communications, customer sales, technology, instructional design, and diversity, equity, and inclusion. So with that, I'm going to turn the floor over now to Rob for his introduction.
Thanks, Aaron. And that's a really hard act to follow right there. Thanks, though. So Rob McCarty, I'm the CEO of the Image Shop. I'm really excited to be here with you guys today. We're a brand marketing firm in Grand Rapids, Michigan. We work in several different verticals, from service to business. So some customers of ours are customer facing, some face business. Everybody struggling and working together through this situation. So happy to be here and glad that we can share our time and resources.
I feel like we have the roadshow today. So next up in the roadshow is Zach. Welcome, Zach.
Thank you, Aaron. I'm glad to be back here. I am Zach Guy, Digital Account Manager at the Image Shop. I have the wonderful pleasure of working with Amanda and Rob on a regular basis, and the distinct pleasure of joining Aaron last week for the SEO conversation. I've been doing social media professionally since like the days of MySpace, and I've never seen anything like this happen before. So I'm excited to talk through this with you guys today and see what we can solve.
Zach, can I be in your top 8 on MySpace?
We'll talk about that, Aaron. It's a very, very privileged group of people. We'll talk.
Exclusive. Perhaps you can stream a little music over your MySpace account too. That would be just wonderful. So a new face to the panel today is Amanda. So welcome, Amanda.
Hello, I'm glad to be here. So I am a social media manager slash consultant, depending on where I am and what I'm doing. And I've been working with the Image Shop a few months now. It's been really great, a great team over there. And I am going to be discussing organic Facebook, Instagram, and all of those different social aspects. So I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. Thank you, Amanda. Welcome. We're excited to have you. And one last face that you see on video, and then one rabble-rouser in the chat box. We'll talk about that in a moment. But first up, or next up rather, Lindsay, welcome to today's webinar.
Welcome. Thank you so much for having me. I'm Lindsay Gross. I'm the Director of Facilitation Services for EventGuard. For those of you that have been joining us for this series, you know my role with you all is your resident chat moderator. And so my job is to just continue to ensure that any questions that you have get lifted up and brought to these amazing group of panelists that have lots of experience to share with us. But we also recognize that you all bring a wealth of experience and knowledge as well. And so that's just as important to us to have that lifted up and have all of those questions answered and experience and wisdom shared. So that's my job here today. And I'm really excited to be here and talk about social media.
Awesome. And not on camera, but in the chat box is also Sarah Kruger. Sarah's on our team, and she is ready to talk to you today about MySpace. So if you are interested in going down that path, she is our resident rabble-rouser, as I've already indicated, and she would love to have conversations with you in the chat box as well. So lots of great support for you today. As Lindsay mentioned, we have some knowledge and expertise and ideas to share with you today, but we know that you have some great knowledge and expertise and resources to share with us today as well. And so we hope that you will do that throughout our conversation. Right now, though, it is your turn to do your introductions. And so in the chat box, I'm going to ask you in a single post to share with us a couple of key things. First, your name would be helpful. Next up would be your role. And so we've kind of shared with you today our formal roles and responsibilities with our respective organizations, but we're just as excited to see your informal roles. So my informal role for EventGuard might be the king of the dad jokes. So if that is a role that you would prefer to share today, we're here for it. Next up, your organization would be great. And although we know that it's easier to type your acronym, should you have one, we'll invite you to spell it out so that we know exactly who you are and where you're coming from today. And lastly, we're interested if you have any questions about social media that you hope to have answered today. We're really curious to find out more about where your headspace is and kind of what's top of mind for you all so that we can help tailor our conversation today around those things. So I've already shared with you kind of my informal role as dad joke extraordinaire. I think my question around social media is really that. And I hadn't really thought about that until our pre-panelist conversation today. But it's really about, as we look to the future, how much is sort of too much? Like what will we share with folks, maybe through pictures or videos, that will inform them and make them choose us as a provider, because we are taking extraordinary measures to ensure their health, safety, and well-being. And to what extent will it scare people and make them maybe less interested in coming? And I'm curious about that balance. And so I don't know if we'll specifically cover that today, but it certainly is weighing on my mind. Lindsay, how about you? What sort of sticks out, both in terms of your informal role, but also this question you might have?
I think that, over the past few weeks as we've been providing these webinars, it's really like narrowed down and hit your informal role, like nailed it, on the head. For me, we keep talking about like my sarcasm, but I almost think my like informal role with our team is like just keeping it real. Like I am kind of a hot mess, right? Like it's just, I'm always spilling things. And for those of you that joined last week's webinar, I like spilled water all over the place right before the webinar started. There's random things that are getting spilled and thrown out all the time. So we'll have to figure out what exactly the formal title or informal title of that is. But like queen of hot mess, is maybe my role. I'm not sure. So I guess the question for social media about me is how to be unique in your connection with your consumer, client, customer, because I feel like there's a lot of messaging of we're here for you. And I feel like I'm watching the same commercial or seeing the same Facebook video over and over again of like, we're here for you during this time of need. And I'm just curious about how you can authentically and uniquely connect. So I don't know, maybe we'll chat a little bit more about that, but that's kind of my question around social media. We have lots of folks that are sharing in the chat box. If I can share some of those thoughts and questions as they're coming up. We have Maggie who is with us, and she's sharing that they're actually ramping up their social media presence. As an online college, we're set up to do social distancing, but where should we best be spending our marketing money? I think that's a great question. Bobby is with us, marketing specialist from Georgia State University. My question is how to balance a mass amount of ideas to keeping the message and voice of our brand. Jamie is with us, group sales manager, trying to build more of a presence on our private event Instagram while still being sensitive to the current environment. Joe Beckwith is with us from Bloom Credit Union, and how can we be helpful to people in our community at a time of what seems like social media overload? I think those are great initial questions, and I think we're going to dig into a lot of that as we get going here today.
Awesome. Thanks, Lindsay. And I know that Lindsay is going to dive deeply into the chat as well to communicate with you all, as is Sarah. So please keep those great introductions coming. With that, I'm going to turn this roadshow over to Rob for a few minutes to just remind us about this ongoing series. This is our third of 5 webinars currently in the April series. And perhaps if this is your first time joining us, you might like to know what's going on. And Rob, just a reminder, you're on mute.
I'm glad we actually didn't take bets before this started as who was going to be the first one to do it. So clearly me. But anyways, I wanted to say thanks again for joining us today. And just really quickly, we've been doing this series. We're going to continue on this series at least for a couple more weeks. Make sure that we cover these topics of how brands are marketing themselves and what can be done during COVID-19. We definitely want you guys to be interactive, ask your questions. I know we can't answer all of them, but we'll do the best to get to them as they come along, and feel free to shoot those questions out while we're talking. And obviously we've got some subject matter experts. We'll cover different topics. So we have at least 2 or 3 more of these events to go, and who knows, maybe more than that. But if you have thoughts on people that you would like to see, or topic experts or topics for us to cover, please let us know in the text box, email us, whatever you think is something that's important, and we'll try to cover it.
Awesome. So as we think about our webinar specifically today and thinking about our topic today around social media, here's just a couple of things to know and to sort of set the foundation for our conversation that's about to unfold. Obviously, we're talking about social media strategy, and specifically thinking about social media strategy within the context of some sort of pandemic or some sort of crisis. We are recording the webinar today, and we will make it available afterwards to you. We are scheduled to go from 1 to 2 p.m. Eastern time. If you do have to jump off early, or if you do have others that you want to see this program afterwards, please just access our websites, and we will make that available to you, and we will list those here in just a moment. If we have not already rolled out the red carpet and encourage you to engage in the chat function, here's just your last reminder. Although we will be making the PowerPoint and the links available to you afterwards, you are welcome to take screenshots at any point in time to be sure to capture exactly what you're looking for in the moment. And finally, we will be writing. Natalie has been doing these like ridiculously amazing write-ups afterwards with all of the key takeaways, and they are posted both to the EventGuard blog as well as the Image Shop blog. And so if you're looking for kind of the written form of what should I know, what did we talk about, what should my takeaways have been, what can I share with others, those are great resources in which to do so. And finally, our future upcoming webinars are available now at eventguard.com/events. We will be teasing a couple of the upcoming webinars toward the end of our conversation today, so do stay tuned for that. In the meantime, I am going to pass this back over to Rob to remind us about our agenda for today.
Absolutely. And so again, we're going to start off with a high-level recap, and some of the previous conversations we had. We've been talking about some of this, but we'll start off there. We're going to work into better practices for organic, current better practices for advertising, And then at the end, we'll debrief. We'll try to, I know there's been a lot of questions. I'm trying to keep my eyes on the chat box too, and lots of questions and thoughts coming in. So we'll work through that. And then we'll wrap this thing up and have some conclusions.
Awesome. And I just really like the terminology here around better practices. Like, what are the current better practices? Because my guess would be in a week from now, 2 weeks from now, a month from now, we might be saying something different. And so do you kind of identify this as the current better practices? And that I think even beyond this date, we just all have to keep in mind that things are going to continue to actively change and shift. And so there might be additional things we would add to that list in the future. And so I think just be aware and be mindful of that and use your best judgment moving forward. All right, so our commitment to interactivity continues, and I'm going to share a couple of poll questions with you all. What I'll ask you to do, hopefully everything will work according to plan. I'm about to launch this poll, and I'll invite you all to participate in it. The first poll that we have for you today is, what is your role within social media? And so we have a number of options for you to consider. They include, I'm a seasoned social media manager for my company. I manage social media accounts for multiple clients. I'm stepping into the role of social media manager for the first time. I'm just a social media observer or participant. And not just, but I'm a social media observer or participant. And I don't manage a social account, and other. If you have something other, we would love for you to share that in the chat box. But perhaps I'll leave this open for another 20 seconds or so. Would love for you to make your selections. And it's always great to see how these fall out. Right now, there's a front runner of I'm a seasoned social media manager, but also I'm stepping into the role of social media manager for the first time as a close second. Maybe give this 10, 15 more seconds. I see the numbers continue to shift and morph, and I want to give everyone a fair shot. There are so far 5 or 6 people who have indicated other, and so if you wouldn't mind sharing that in the chat box, we would love that as well. I'm gonna go ahead and end the poll. I'll kind of share the results, and then Lindsay, I'll come to you in terms of what we're seeing in terms of the other responses. Our front runner for today, 32% of folks said I'm a seasoned social media manager for my company. 25% said I'm stepping into the role of social media manager for the first time. And then I guess in third place was other. And so perhaps you can share with us some of what you're seeing
we
there.
have some other that have been popped into the chat box. I am chief cook and bottle washer. So I get to doing social media when time allows. Another other being this designing social media posts to be posted by the state. Personal social media owner, stepping into the role of Spanish speaking manager. And another other is, I don't currently manage any professional social media accounts, but I do develop the content. So
awesome.
Definitely some others popping in.
Awesome, great. Then we're going to move on to our second of 3 polls. And again, it's always sort of like a roll of the dice. Like, is this going to work? Is this not going to work? So I'm sharing the second poll with you now. It might take a moment or two to pop up. Our question here now is, how is your organization currently utilizing social media? And we do have a couple of options for you to consider. I've continued following my content calendar. I'm still posting, but just not as often. I am posting only important news and updates for my customers. I have stopped posting altogether, or again, other. And we'd love for you to just maybe drop that in the chat box. And again, Lindsay will kind of share some of those out loud. It's always interesting. I know Natalie's on today. It's always interesting when we write these poll questions, because you try to write options that are inclusive of the full spectrum of answers. But this seems like one that maybe a majority of people have other relationships with social media. And so we'll love for you to share those in the chat box. Again, I'll give this maybe 15 more seconds, and then I'll go ahead and end the poll, share the results, and then we'll hear from Lindsay as well. Right now, as I have already mentioned, in the lead is other. So I'm going to be curious what those are. I'm gonna go ahead and end the poll, and then we'll go ahead and share that out. So for poll number 2, again, we asked, how's your organization currently using social? And majority of people, 36% indicated other. So we'll come to that here in just a second. In second place, 28% was, I'm posting only important news and updates. And tied for third place was I've continued following my content calendar and I'm still posting, but just not as often. So tell us, Lindsay, what else are you seeing?
Yeah, there's a lot about ramping up social media presence right now, and that kind of being how it's being currently utilized. Someone else shared that maintaining like a traditional content calendar, but delayed other aspects due to COVID, which I think is great. Kind of being conscious of what your already plans were, and if they're still applicable to your audience. And more people sharing that we're posting much more often, mostly news for our members, and trying to add in some just general regular posts too. We stopped posting our regular posting at the beginning of social distancing. So yeah, lots of folks, it really seems like are ramping up their social media presence. So this is more timely than ever.
Awesome, great. Well, and it is interesting for the accounts that we're working on too, and with the clients we're working with, there seems like there almost was this unofficial moratorium, and I don't know about for everyone else, but it seems like we're all collectively like ramping up in a variety of ways. So it'll be interesting to continue that conversation moving forward. All right, third and final poll. Before I post this one, I just want to note that's slightly different. You can choose more than one answer, and so we're going to be asking you which social media platforms your organization currently utilizes. Note currently utilizes, not maybe we want to, but what do you currently utilize? And please select all of them that apply. So we have Facebook, we have Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram. I figured TikTok, why not? We have YouTube,
I've
Snapchat.
seen so many TikTok videos right now.
Pinterest, and again, other. So if you have other, feel free to click that one, but also maybe share with us in the chat box what all you're using.
Yeah, I think at some point I have to break down and try TikTok, but I feel like
I'd be interested, like to the social media wizards on the other end. Is that something that brands should be engaging in? People have been telling me that I need to get on there. I'm just curious about it.
There is a particular person that I follow that posts like one with her kids every day. And it's like the bright spot of my day is just watching these TikTok videos that her and her family do together. It must take them all day. Like they're so involved. And her family does live along with her sister and their kids. And so it's like this thing that they all do together to connect every day. It's really cool. I feel like my TikTok would be me screaming at my kids, like with music in the background. Like
because that's super entertaining.
Like. Yes.
To give folks maybe 5 more seconds to make their selections. I almost had them in like a decent order. So we'll see here in a second what that actually looks like. So let me share the results here. Probably not a surprise, Facebook was number 1 with 96%. And remember, this is going to be slightly different. Totals won't add up to 100 because you can choose more than one answer. But in second place was Twitter. In third place was Instagram. In fourth place was LinkedIn. And then in fifth place was YouTube. And some of the fan favorites like TikTok and Snapchat and Pinterest came in a distant place. But in any event, that's sort of where things are falling out.
Yeah, we don't have a lot of others kind of popping up in the chat box right now, but I think that that's not a huge surprise for sure. Yeah. Those results.
All right, well, I'm going to get us back into our PowerPoint slide deck. I think Rob, Zach, Amanda, you can give me a thumbs up. You're seeing the slide deck again, yes? Awesome. All right, then let me boot scoot boogie along. So Rob, I think you're going to introduce to us this idea around messaging, and I know that we've added quite a bit of content here to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think any conversation right now where we talk about social media, where we're engaging with consumers and others, we really have to think probably first about our optics. I know a lot of what we've seen people even putting in the chat box right now is about like, how do I deal with this and still be sensitive to how people feel? How do I deal with this and grow my brand? And it's really important to think about how you're presenting yourself right now, being smart and savvy about your content and how it relates to the world and your consumers and anybody, frankly, who engages with it. And I think it's the one thing that I've been trying to really focus on myself, not just personally, but professionally, is that we're in this timeline and we have to make the most of it, again, without being too high or too low in how we're presenting it. So this first bullet really speaks to me, and I've been saying it a lot. I'm sure my team, which a couple are on with me right now and a couple are in the chat, I've been trying to talk about silver linings or opportunities that are there not in the sense of taking advantage of those opportunities in a negative way, but saying there's things that can be positive out of this. And when we have those things for our businesses, we need to be able to think about how we present those to people. So that's a big start for me. I know you've got a lot of thoughts too, Aaron. So like in your thoughts and what you've been doing, where are you landing?
Well, I mean, there are just so many. As I was thinking about all of my key ideas around messaging, I had so many that I wanted to put in here. And I think that my caveat is these may not all be right for your organization, but sort of pick and choose the ones that sort of feel like a good fit. I think, tone, silver linings, as you have indicated, are certainly important. I think intentionality, not only about content, but really being thoughtful about the images that we're using, and word choice are important. And you probably heard us talk about and think about and call out, pictures we're seeing online right now of people in groups or people shaking hands, or we need to be mindful of not posting things that are not current to the current state of affairs. And also being really thoughtful about words like from the comfort of like, you're joining the webinar today from the comfort of your home. Well, are you joining from like a laptop on a dining room table next to your kids and a spouse perhaps, and it's lunchtime and people are screaming? Like, that's super comfortable and relaxing, right? And so just being, I think, mindful about content, but images and word choice, I think that they all matter. I think that, we've seen, Rob, in particular, people trying to, either intentionally or not, trying to push wares, products, services that aren't really relevant right now. But also, for me, there's been this like real distinction around, is the thing that I'm posting unique and does it add value? Because if what I'm saying is sort of a copy and paste of what everyone else is saying, is that incredibly helpful, or is that just adding to the noise? And certainly there's been a lot more noise and a lot more things posted on social media probably than before. I would be curious, I don't know if you know this, Zach, or if any of you know this, but I would just generally be curious if there's any statistics out there about the volume of content that's being pushed out via social than maybe we've experienced in the past. But my guess, my like intuitive guess would be that there's more, that the volume has to be greater. We've been thinking a lot about this idea around sort of less formal content, that, if your website in particular has everyone's headshots like in an office or super professional, like is that appropriate, or is that not appropriate right now? Been seeing people sort of change them out for sort of at-home photos, but also featuring some of these like at-home and behind the scenes photos on social as well. Like, I just think that it's incredibly interesting and engaging to give people a glimpse into what they're experiencing, and maybe to let some of our guard down in terms of everything that we put out there, we push out there is super professional, right? So I'm going to stop here before I continue. There's certainly more bullet points here, but Rob, I'd love for you, if there are things that you want to weigh in on, and I know, Lindsay, you popped in at one point as well, if you want to come back, if there's anything in particular we want to lift up. I'm happy to sort of pause before we kind of keep rolling forward.
Yeah, I think there's just this interesting idea of Ashley sharing in the chat box around they actually had a reduction in hits on their social media. And it was just kind of creating this interesting connection to what you were sharing around. Is it a volume issue? Or I'd be curious if any of you, Aaron, Rob, Zach, if you guys have thoughts on maybe why that is. So why potentially might she not be getting as many hits on their social media right now?
If I can kind of cut in on
Absolutely.
that, I saw that it was like 96% use Facebook. Facebook is not known for organic growth, reach, impressions, anything. Facebook really wants you to spend ad money. So if there's messages and those pieces that are really intentional and you really want your audience to know, Zach will kind of be talking about how to use that spend to reach your audience. If you're trying to kind of get it out to everybody and not having all this paid spend, you really need to start looking at other social media models. Twitter and Instagram are really great, or higher levels of organic visibility.
Great, thanks, Amanda.
I think some things to consider for everybody right now. We're in obviously this still in a very early stage of something and trying to navigate our way. But one thing that this panel talked about pre-show here, if you will, is really starting to think about where you're going to go with your messaging and your businesses in the next 2 to 3 months. We've had to spend a lot of time thinking about what's happening right now. And while I encourage you to continue to think about what's happening right now, things continue to change, and we need to start thinking about what business looks like as we start to re-enter kind of the built world outside of our own homes, comfort of our own homes, if you will. And I think it's important to start engaging with that and starting to think about what our content might look like as we're moving through this very unusual, not normal timeline, and get prepared. I think what I'm noticing currently is that a lot of people are unprepared, and I know we don't know what next is, but we still should be thoughtful about that. And our social media is a great way to start talking about it, depending on the kind of business that you have, what's next. And I wouldn't encourage you to do that today, but I'd encourage you to start planning for that now, so that when the time comes, you're ready for it. And just a couple other of these points that we have. One that really resonates with me is how you're contributing to your community and customers. I think if positioned appropriately and not doing it to position yourself as, hey, look how great we are for doing this, but more of showing your care and concern and transparency and honesty about what you care about and what you're working on to help support your community. That's a really important piece. Your customers right now are paying more attention to what you're doing for your place, being your community, and for your team than ever before. And it's been moving that way prior to this anyways, but now it's a hyper focus. So again, I think you have to really think about how you shape that content and what you're being true to your voice and being honest and transparent. But that's a really important thing to be thinking about. How are you engaging and contributing to what's going on for the betterment right now?
I'll invite Amanda to come back for a moment as well. Amanda, you were talking before we started today about, what it's going to look like moving forward and how you're going to make choices around perhaps like where to get your hair done in the future or where you're going to buy a certain product or service. I think you had a really great point around being able to leverage social media to help people make choices. Would you be willing to share that?
Yeah, so I think the easiest one to look at is kind of like a salon. So as you are thinking about what that means as we're opening back up, obviously we don't have control of what opens when, but you should try to figure out how to make your business the most comfortable spot. Whether it's like at salon, there are UV technology that you can buy to UV kills viruses, to kind of wipe down all of the chairs, and sanitization methods and masks, or we kind of mentioned whether you take, a little glove station, you're putting gloves when you go in and throwing them as you go out. So if you start to prepare and acquire these things that you're needing for when your business opens, you can kind of talk about the process of getting ready on your social media. And then when all of a sudden I can go to a salon again, I'm more likely to go to the salon that I know has been preparing and has created this environment that's going to be more sanitary than, say, the salon that just kind of is reopening their doors. So you can kind of use social media to show your process of getting ready and to have these new fixtures in place. Because it's not just going to be this light switch that I think originally everybody was kind of planning on.
Awesome, thanks. Zach, is there anything on this slide before we move on in terms of actual content that you might want to share or mention?
No, I think you guys covered all the main points pretty well. I think we've been talking a lot about like retail and one-to-one services, but if you are like an organization, or if you're a public entity or a GMO or something like, or an NGO or something like that, really kind of synthesize kind of what we're saying here for yourself too, because how you're communicating might be a little bit different because you're involved in the discussion going on about COVID. But just keeping your eyes or your thoughts focused on the fact that some people out there aren't having the same experience as you, or they're having worse experiences, and things are starting to change now, and just kind of reorienting yourself every week or every couple of days to what the new zeitgeist is talking about.
And I think on services, you can figure out how to provide things that your customers might need. So if you're a B2B company, you can kind of say like, all right, well, my customers are going to need these types of things set up. How can I provide that information to them or kind of be that aid?
Yeah, and maybe also if you can't provide that service directly to your customer, to your end user, maybe you're helping amplify other messages that are those messages. Maybe you're just kind of retweeting or reposting or sharing some kind of post on your page that amplifies the messages that are the ones that need to cut through, even if it's not you right now.
I think it's also important I think the last thing that I'll say before we move on, and it's clear there's such a rich bed of information to talk about today. The last thing that I would just share is I think being mindful of these like blanket statements of we're all in this together, or we're all experiencing the same thing, or these statements that on their surface seem positive and to promote the team or the community. But in all reality, from a diversity, equity, and inclusion lens, all audiences aren't experiencing COVID-19 in the same way. And audiences are actually disproportionately experiencing both illness and deaths. And I think it's important to be mindful that the messages that we promote on social media are important not only to our current audience, but to our future audiences. And seemingly innocuous conversation or dialogue or phrases maybe are being taken in a completely different way from their original intention. And so we could probably spend a whole hour on that alone, but I just think it's an important point to remember, particularly as we prepare to come out of this.
Right on. And Lindsay, do we have, I think we had, you popped on for a second. Is there, I know we've got a question kind of hanging there from Dawn.
Yeah, I think Zach, kind of started chatting about it, but it was kind of related to what Amanda was sharing around this. How do you apply your thoughts, not to a service business, so not to retail, but to a service business. And I think you guys kind of started sprinkling in some thoughts on that. But if there's additional thoughts or ideas, I think we're going to get into some of those as we talk about implementation. But maybe Amanda and Zach, you guys can pop some stuff in the chat box as well.
Cool. So I'm going to toss this over to Amanda. She's going to introduce to us sort of organic tactics, and we have a number of great ideas to share with you there.
Hello. All right, so when we get to the next slide here, we can kind of look at different ways that you can tackle kind of creating organic content. And I saw that we did have some people creating content, so I hope this will be good for you guys. So I think the first thing that you have to remember is to keep your customers, including your future customers and your current customers and employees first. If you keep that in mind with your messaging and the kind of content you create, then you will be able to have kind of that voice where there's empathy and without feeling fake or inauthentic. So I think the perfect example of this, I put Burger King versus McDonald's, and I'm not sure who's seen what, but McDonald's basically, they took their arches and they separated it to say, we're doing social distancing together. And how much money they spent to do that on their signs that could have been utilized in other areas was drastically called out. Then you had Burger King, who they offered, if you bought one meal, you got 2 free kids meals. That was their first thing that they did. And that created so much positivity around Burger King looking out for their customers. They also have been giving employees food to take home. And so they're kind of keeping those people first. And in the long run, that's going to buy them a lot of good momentum and brand loyalty. So then the Burger King, again, they have a new marketing director, and I think he's really cool. And he said how to make the Whopper at home, and he released the recipe, and they did a little video. Well, now McDonald's is doing that, and everybody else is following Burger King's footsteps. Then like 2 days ago, Burger King said, hey, we're going to post questions on our social media. And if you can answer the question right, because, kids and schooling is kind of difficult, you can get a free meal. And so they've been doing that for students. So again, they're kind of thinking of their customer base. They catered to the kids. Now they're catering to students. And they're creating a lot of goodwill. Obviously, they have the capital to be able to do some of those things, but those are just good examples of how to kind of look at it and say, like, how can we benefit our customers, and who can we benefit, and in which ways can we? So I think the first step to figuring those things out is you should really do a big brainstorm, even things that you think are out of reach. Just write them down, and maybe there's ways to kind of scale them back. So I'm going to share my screen real quick because the Getty Museum, I think, did a really good job of this. So let's see. All right. Can I get a thumbs up if you see my screen? Thank you. So the Getty Museum issued a challenge. Again, obviously nobody can go there because it's an event-based type space. And they said, hey, can you do your quarantine version of this artwork? And so they had tons of people. I think this is funny. He's based down in the pool. Tons of people just kind of getting creative and posting on social media. There were Twitter posts. There were things on Instagram, Facebook of them reenacting these different images. Oh, that's funny. And so it was just a really quick way. I'm going to stop the share now. And we can go back to the slides. But I think that was a really cool way for them to get people involved in the art and kind of bring the art into their home, but also allow like a creative outlet for it. So I'm sure that was a random brainstorm that they're like, hey, let's just put this out here and try it. So then once you look at those things, I think one of the things you should start to look at is there a way to creatively monetize your new offerings? And if you can provide value long-term. So I think it's important when you look through here to kind of you look at, like, you don't want to shoot yourself in the foot, I guess is my caution when figuring out new things to add. An example of this to me would be a lot of gyms are offering like $20 memberships. Well, you can go on YouTube and find workout people for free. And now if I get used to working out online for free, why would I come back and pay $170 at the gym, right? So it would probably be better to offer free classes so that they stay with you rather than go and cut the $20 and go to YouTube. So kind of figure out if you are making these into monetization aspects, that it's not something long-term that's gonna kind of pull away from people's ability or want to come back. A good example might be, oh, that's on another page, so let me wait. But I also want to note that this is a really good time to use LinkedIn for networking. An example of this, my background is film, and we reached out and actually got in contact with Beyonce's sister Solange for a role because nobody has anything better to do but like talk to people and connect. So everybody is sitting at home, whether it's potential, if you're B2B clients, or you want to learn from somebody, it's a really good idea to kind of reach out because now is the best time to get in contact.
Well, and I was going to say, I think it's Cycle Bar. Folks can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think, when you were talking about ways to maybe monetize or to create brand loyalty during this time, I think it was Cycle Bar that said, if you can't come in to take your class, but if you want to rent one of our bikes to take home with you, like, we will check it out to you. And it was just such a, it cemented in my mind, like, if you are we all have the thing that we're super loyal to. It's like, we're never going to steer away from that thing. But that is a way to cement your loyalty with someone, is to sort of rent your product out to them or do something that you would never think could possibly happen, because the in-person component is so important. Because as you think about it, you didn't have an opportunity to explore a new workout regimen. You didn't order a new workout product online. The thing that you already love, you get to do at home and continue. And then when you can go back in person, you're going to go back in person because they need their bike back. And so it's such that is I think that's another great example of brainstorming at its best, of what happens if we drop down all the barriers and we don't say if it's possible, but we just say, what do our customers want right now, and just try to make it happen?
Mm-hmm. That's a good example. So some of the things that I think generally can be utilized by a lot of businesses, for example, is like an entertainment pack. And it can be, if you have a movie theater business, right? It's easy to say, hey, we're going to have DVDs and popcorn and throw in some like t-shirts or whatever. You kind of make a pack. And then you can have like a night that maybe everybody comes together to watch online to kind of create a community feel. Some different kind of off-kilter examples would be Hobby Lobby has had a lot of problems because they want to stay open. Well, come up with like, you can have yarn that gets woven through different trees to create an obstacle course for kids. So you can kind of get creative, not just traditional arts and crafts, but thinking of different ideas and different ways to do them. And then weekly you're sending out, or monthly, these like kid packs with obstacle courses and different things that are a little off the wall, and less about like staying inside and coloring or painting. So that to me all falls under that entertainment pack, and that could be monetized, and that could either continue or not continue. It's obviously not going to replace your business, but it keeps people in the habit of coming to you for those things. Another thing would be creating teams and having them race to complete tasks. So you could break teams down by like men and women, have people sign up, and you can create quizzes, trivia, video responses. And they can be, if you work in environment, like, and you have a Facebook page that everybody's kind of interested in what's going on in the environment and how to help take care of those things. You could have trivia kind of around that. Also, you can kind of see they have a lot of those video challenges. I don't know if you've seen the one with like the makeup brush where they're like regular and they do this and they're cute. So you can kind of have team components to the people on your pages. And then obviously you have the very normative, what I think you're seeing a lot of is live stream events, and ways to do that might be like interviews with different people who are professionals and experts in their fields, polls, competitions, anything to kind of build a sense of community and becoming one. So you're still having that, hey, come hang out with us, come spend time with us. And that's something that people need without trying to be too inauthentic.
So I know that we are about 12 minutes out from the top of the next hour, but Rob and Zach, are there any other points in sort of the organic social media tactics that you wanted to lift up or share at this time?
I think Amanda did a great job. Zach, you?
Yeah, kind of tying that back to like the business to business world or the B2G world, is the idea, and I experience this a lot with our clients and vendors, is the idea that people are home with their kids is such a prevalent thing right now. I don't have kids, but I'm as aware of it as people with kids are. So, I mean, if you are a B2B company, if you're not providing actual monetary value or a service value, think of it like the Lord of the Rings. You know, who's Gimli? Who's the elf? Who's got the axe? Who's got the bow? What can you provide to those? Can you provide a coloring book for their kids that's themed around your business to keep them busy on your next call? Can you recommend some kind of resources? I keep going back to coloring books. I don't know. I don't have kids. This is what kids do, is color books all day. I don't know. But just things like that may not literally be out of your product offering or your service offering, just as a way to provide that value to your clients or your vendors or things like that. Little very simple things that you can do. Maybe it's not social media driven, but you can deliver it that way if you want to. But yeah, we can start talking about paid tactics too, because this to me all kind of has the same concept, needing to be mindful of who's where and when and what's going on with that and adapting your message to that. So first and foremost is just flat out consider the necessity of your ad. You know, really take a close look internally at the service you're providing. If you are a B2G organization right now, you're probably very valued and you probably have a lot of ability to help right now. If you're a B2C, outside of like the food industry, maybe business to consumer type of company, you may not find that value as easily as a B2G or a B2B company. So really take a hard look and see if what you're putting out there needs to be out there, or as Aaron said earlier, providing value. When I look at it now, if you're breaking through, the goal has always been breaking through the noise, but to me, the noise right now is the information that people need to know. So does your message supersede that? Really ask yourself that. The other thing you can really be doing if you are going to take advertising out on social media is really refine your ad targeting. I see a lot of people I talk to, they're not taking those targeting options. And when I say targeting options, I mean custom customer lists, lookalike audiences, behavior targeting, interest targeting, demographic targeting, age targeting. If you're not familiar with that, definitely familiarize with the legality of that, especially if you're a government organization. There's some laws that govern who you can target to, but a lot of business B2C people don't have those same restrictions, but definitely take advantage of those at this moment. And some things I want to highlight, geographical exclusions and inclusions. We're able to see on the map who's being hit hardest right now. So maybe sending an ad to the people of New York for a bike chain repair kit is probably not the best idea, but we know they're not being hit hard in other places, or we know that some countries are even recovering. If you're an international company, you can start maybe selling in Singapore or places of China that are opening up again. So really understand your geographical exclusions and inclusions. And when I say this, really understand it too. Tomorrow it could change, next week it could change. Stay on top of that day to day. The other is exclusionary customer lists. Last week we talked to a lot of event type people, and I'm assuming you work in different industries. So you might have like a healthcare type of clientele. You might have a manufacturing type of clientele. You might have your government clientele. Really understand who's willing to accept that message right now. And if you're putting a message out about book a hotel for your fall conference, the real estate industry probably is eager to see something like that right now. The medical industry probably could care less. They probably don't want to see that message right now, or won't respond to it. So those types of paid advertisements are just kind of a hemorrhage of money or money wasted. So really refine that down. A lot of great resources online, YouTube. If you just Google those types of things, there's so many people like me out there who want your business, who are eager to tell you that stuff in detail. The last thing is rethink your goals and conversion optimizations. If you haven't already done that, you might have some things set up for getting people into your location, or getting people to call you, or conversions that aren't necessarily going to benefit you right now. So really understand those. And when I say that there's traffic conversions, there are clicks to a page. If you want someone to see a landing page, if you want someone to take a download of something, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, these platforms have the way of refining that down to people who are likely to take those actions. Just make sure you're the right ones. And then I'll bring up an example here, because I keep getting this ad from a company on Facebook, and they're telling me it's a 5-step process to use my stimulus check to improve my home or something like that. And I think it's very easy, if you're not experienced on the ad side of Facebook, to click that boost button, to click that boost my post button, and just put 10, 15, 20, or $100 behind a post. There are a lot of implications with that can be negative. So when you do that, you're basically saying to Facebook, I want you to send my post to everyone on Facebook who's likely to leave a comment. So think about Facebook for just 1 second, not even half a second, right? Who's most likely to comment on Facebook about stuff right now, or in general? So if you are going to take these tactics, really understand what you're putting your money behind, and then monitor, and take action against things that aren't hitting your goals. If this company would have segmented a little bit, or adjusted their goals, or gone and actually set up an ad and not just given Facebook $100 and click the button, they might have avoided the negative repercussions that they found out there. And again, it's more of a B2C example, but again, think of those industries and those types of people and the audiences that are struggling right now. Consider that one message or no message. And then think about the industries and people and organizations and audiences that are looking for something economic wise going on right now. And then maybe that's another type of message to them.
Awesome. I'm going to jump back to you, Rob, you and Amanda. Is there anything else that you would like to add before we jump into our final Q&A?
Amanda?
I think what Zach mentioned about goals is really important. I think you have to know what you're trying to do. You can kind of, obviously everything changes. So you can kind of do a rough draft of this is what we're trying to do this month. And then as things change, fine tune everything as you go. But you really have to know what your end goal is, and what you're trying to provide to be able to do that.
Right on. Yeah, I'm ready to jump into questions, Aaron.
All right, Lindsay, take it away.
Yeah, there's been this theme of this question around the appropriate tone, and how to be authentic on social media right now. And so I'd be curious if each of you could maybe share your top number one tip of how to hit appropriate tone during the current time and how to be authentic during this current time. So an interesting perspective around tone and how to hit that right.
I know right away what I'm going to say for this, so I'll let you guys think for a second. But
Perfect. Go Zach.
It's going to be really tempting to leverage that stimulus check into some kind of benefit for your company or your organization. And you're going to see other people do that. Just don't get caught in that trap. Don't fall into that funnel. If you're breaking through anyways, just separate yourself from that noise. I would avoid it wholly.
I think the best way, like my top tip, I think like you, Zach, like mine came right away. Like my top tip is to demonstrate your authenticity through transparency. And what I mean by that is like, show me the non-polished version of what's going on. Like show me, like right now I have like a green screen behind me and I'm working on my dining room table. And we've been posting these pictures all along. Like you can see like that this isn't like a pretty shot that's going on back here. And that's just one example, but we've been doing that constantly, just showing our behind the scenes photos and footage of everything we've been doing to let you know that although it might be coming off super polished, like we're stringing it together just like everyone else is.
For me, it'd be keep in mind who is reading your content, both age and location. If the majority of people who follow you are in New York, right, you're going to be speaking a little different than if the majority of the people that are on your social media page are in like Nebraska. So I think kind of being aware of who you're talking to, both in age and income and demographic, and being cognizant of what you're saying to that specific group.
Yeah, I would just add that I think if I had one tip, it's to be extremely thoughtful about what you're saying. And just like what everybody else is telling you right now, there's a way to be authentic and true to your brand. And that requires effort on your part. And to figure out what are the things, if you don't know what your brand stands for, this is a great time to figure it out, because you're going to be trying to bring this idea forward for people to understand. And they're looking for authenticity. We know that as brand marketers right now, that authenticity matters a lot.
I just share this slide because it's such a nice correlation to what we're talking about next week. This topic of mission and vision and values has come up for, I think, collectively all of us time and time again. And what we're going to be talking about specifically in episode 4 next week is how to remind yourself about what your mission and values are, but also to maybe take a pulse on whether or not you're living them through your various branding and marketing platforms. And so it's just a great opportunity to check the alignment of your mission and values with your current practices to identify whether or not there's alignment or there's opportunities for improvement. And you can register for that right now at eventguard.com/events. Lindsay, before we sign off for today, any other comments or any other wrap up to share?
No, I just think this idea of it being sensitive but engaging right now is really resonating with folks. And I know that Zach and Rob and Amanda are here and willing to talk more about that, I think, offline as well as we wrap up for today.
Absolutely.
Awesome. So you can reach out to Zach and Amanda and Rob at theimageshop.com. You can reach me and Lindsay and Sarah at eventguard.com. We're happy to help and continue the conversation with any of the questions maybe that we weren't able to tackle today. But in the meantime, we appreciate you taking time to think about social media and to do that with us for today. We hope to see you on a future webinar. In the meantime, stay safe and stay healthy, everyone.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.